Okay, we are now live, both on Instagram and YouTube. So, today on the program, I think this is one of the best programs we've got so far. If we've watched the Utah Stories program before, we've had a lot of kinks and problems. This is still a soft launch. We're still not ready for prime time, but we're talking all about homelessness and housing today. And the reason why I think this is such an important issue is because so many people entering the workforce right now cannot afford basic housing with the minimum amount of pay most people are going to get. Even if you're going to earn between 15 and 20 bucks an hour, you really can't afford housing. So we're going to go into some solutions to this problem. We're going to go into the growing problem of homelessness and why there's a direct correlation, of course, between homelessness and housing, and what I've learned in 8 months of covering this issue. It's a very complicated issue because it involves homelessness, which involves very many things. It includes addiction, it includes mental disorders, it includes housing scarcity, people who just don't want to work, as we found too. But it also includes people who want to get off the streets, who are unable to get off the streets because the city policies are preventing them from doing that. As we learned last week, one of the homeless advocates who's actually still living on the streets, Stacy Johnson, we interviewed her, and she said that the mayor of Salt Lake City, Mayor Mendenhall, lied to her in saying that the most successful homeless camp that has existed in Salt Lake would not be abated. And then a week later, they shut down that camp. The homeless people who were living at that camp all had to scatter. And if you notice, there's a lot of people sleeping on Main Street in downtown Salt Lake City. There's a lot of people sleeping on State Street in medians all over the city. People are sleeping on the streets and the sidewalks. Why is this happening? We're going to get into that. All of that's going to be on today's episode. If you can catch us on YouTube, you'll see this whole episode. You can watch it live. You can chime in. We'd love to hear your comments. We're going to be sharing a bunch of comments that we've received over the last week. We've received about 50 comments on our interviews with homeless people. So best place to check this out is YouTube, Utah Stories YouTube channel. But we're going to keep it live here on Instagram for a while now, too. So let's start out by examining the suburbs from my house, riding my bike from Murray, Utah, down to the Jordan River Parkway Trail. This footage that you're watching on the screen now is part of a documentary I'm doing on bike trails in Utah. I've been working on it for a while. But before I moved to Murray, I had no idea this trail even existed. This trail is the canal trails in Murray, Utah, and they travel all the way to the historic Murray Wheeler Farm. And I had no idea you could get to this amazing farm and check out all these animals, and the kids love it. It's really an awesome destination to get to by bike. But then you try to go further westward to the Jordan River Trail, and it's kind of treacherous. You're traveling with other cars. But I want to show you this footage that I got of this group of people who were about to launch boats on the Jordan River. And I had no clue this even existed until about a year ago. I saw somebody paddling down the Jordan River, and I'm like, that's a thing? And this man on the screen, if you're joining us on YouTube, he is named Eric. Man, I don't want to mess up his last name. I think it's Bonmer. And he runs an organization that takes kids down the Jordan River, teaches them about the birds, the habitats along the river, the issues concerning water preservation, the issues concerning water quality. And if you grew up in Salt Lake like I did, 10 or 15 years ago, the Jordan River was basically a cesspool. You did not want to go on the Jordan River if you did not want to smell really bad or try swimming in a really awful place. But the habitat and the wildlife along the river now is amazing. I go on that river and I see herons, I see pelicans, I see storks, I've seen a bald eagle and a hawk, and it's like it's turned into this incredible corridor if you enjoy seeing wildlife. And these kids are on the river and they're enjoying it and checking it out thanks to Eric's nonprofit organization. He partners with summer camps. I'm going to leave a link in the description of how you can access him. This is a big kerplunk. Drone goes right in the river. Very sad. My DJI drone hit a branch, went into the river. And I'm going to try to get it replaced, of course. So, but yeah, it was really cool to do this and see this. And I'm going to actually go run the Jordan River in a kayak probably in the next couple of weeks. And so with that, I traveled along the Jordan River Trail all the way to downtown Salt Lake City after we visited this. This is just a little more footage of what it looks like to go river rafting underneath a freeway. It's quite awesome. These kids just obviously were loving it. Just these giant pillars. But look at this pelican. I just happened to run into this massive pelican right on the river, just chilling. And so, yeah, and I love this thing. I got my cargo bike electrified, and I've got this big cargo bike I do deliveries on, and I got an electric motor put on it, and that thing just hauls ass. I can go about 25 miles an hour on this Jordan River Trail, and how it works is you hardly even need to pedal. So I took my little girl all the way to downtown Salt Lake City. This was on like Tuesday, and I wanted to check out the site that had been abated a week ago. So if you know about our program a week ago, we did a whole show about the abatement of a huge homeless camp in downtown Salt Lake City, just west of the city, where about 40 people were camping out, and the Salt Lake City Health Department showed up with about a dozen officers. They kicked all the homeless people out. It was really sad to see. We have a video on YouTube that you can watch the whole thing. But this is what it looks like now, 1 week after the abatement. This is where all these people were camped. Totally empty, at least in the part where people were at before. But this land here, as you can see, it's about 40 acres, I would say. It's a ton of land, and it's by the freeway on, I believe that was probably the 6 South on-ramp. And then underneath the freeway, all these people are still camped in the shade. They're probably getting harassed by the cops all the time. But, I mean, not an ideal place to be because these giant trains are going through all the time. But you got to understand, this is such a better place for homeless people to be and hang out than Metro downtown Salt Lake City. Why do we think that it's so awful to let these people camp here and then maybe provide them with a dumpster? Because now you go into downtown Salt Lake City. I'm showing on the screen now. This is the corner where the road home used to be, where people are getting in line for St. Vincent de Paul's dining hall. And you can see there's just like dozens and dozens and dozens of people camping on the street. And they could be in that field that I just showed, but instead they're flushed out by the cops, and now they're all over Main Street. I'm showing Main Street now. And this used to be my favorite part of Main Street in downtown Salt Lake. This is where Zion's bookstore used to be, Sam Weller Zion's bookstore. And it's now just full of homeless people trying to survive. And these people are literally have nowhere else to go. Some of them are drug addicts, obviously. Some of them are have mental issues. Some of them certainly possibly don't even want to work. But it's interesting what I got back from the comments. I'm going to go back. I want to show these guys. The comments that I got back after the video, I said, like I said, I got about 50 comments. Most of them are not positive. Most of the comments I got were negative. Most people thought I was putting a little bit too compassionate spin on the homeless people. But I think what people don't understand is, like, if these guys camping, lying in Main Street, taking a nap in the middle of the day, had the field to take their nap and a tent, I wouldn't. I would expect them to be in the field and not in the middle of the street. But they don't have that. They don't have any other place to go, so they're sleeping in the sidewalk. And so I want to read the comments that I got to you now and share those with you. The first I want to read is a letter that I was CC'd on from a couple who visited downtown Salt Lake on vacation, and they wrote this letter to Mayor Mendenhall, and they CC'd me on it. So this is written to Mayor Mendenhall. Dear Mayor Mendenhall, my wife Kathy and I recently flew into Salt Lake City. We stayed at the Grand America, 2 visits, 5 nights. From Salt Lake City, we took a road trip up to Jackson, Wyoming. Then we went down to Zion and Bryce National Parks with one big loop. While in Salt Lake City, we loved the Grand America, the Mormon Church Museum, the Family Search Library, the Natural History Museum, Red Butte Gardens, and a trip to Ruth Steiner. But we would have trouble recommending to our friends a visit to Salt Lake. Our concern is with the homeless problem immediately around the hotel and up Main Street toward Temple Square. In the daytime, it's heartbreaking. At night, we would never venture out. I know the matter is complex, but please see what you can do to more effectively address the needs of these homeless people. We don't want Salt Lake City to become another city to avoid. Sincerely, William Hooper of Durham, North Carolina. And then we got about 30 to 40 comments on Reddit, also saying that whatever they're doing, it's not working. We need to change plans. This writer named Lamp37, this was the most upvoted comment. He says, the first half of this article, and just so you know what article we're referring to, this is the article on utahstories.com. Did the Salt Lake City Mayor Mendenhall lie to the homeless people? He writes, the first half of this article rubs me the wrong way because it reinforces the idea that the only way to be compassionate to homeless people is to let them do whatever they want. Allowing these massive camps to fester and grow forever in a state of anarchy will never be a good solution. But the second half of the article touches on the real, incredibly frustrating problem. The state refuses to put real money towards the problem. The homeless crisis will never be solved without massive investment in housing, healthcare, rehab, and other social services for these people, which in many cases should be court mandated as part of a diversion program for petty crime offenders. The state, and every other state too, really would rather these people just die than take care of them. So this comment, I actually agree that a homeless camp, which is essentially anarchy, where there's no rules, there's no garbage collection, there's no sanitation, is a terrible idea. And the camp that we saw abated a week ago, I wasn't an advocate for that camp sticking around, because even Stacy Johnson, who we interviewed, the unofficial homeless mayor, she said violence had showed up at that camp. It stunk really bad. There was too much garbage. What they wanted were porta potties and dumpsters and rules. And a camp without those things, of course, can't be maintained. But a camp with those things can allow people to get jobs and work. If their stuff can stay safe, they can get jobs. The problem is their stuff is not safe. They can't go and get a job because they cannot leave all their belongings behind and, somehow show up to work, after taking a shower somewhere. So very important. I'm not promoting that an anarchy camp exists. What I'm promoting is that the city partner with homeless advocates and homeless people and get these camps operational. And that's what's not happening, which absolutely could be happening. And I'm going to get into more of that in a moment. But I wanted to talk about the money being spent, because he points out that we need to invest more money. But we had Scott Howell on the program 3 weeks ago. Scott Howell works at the Pioneer Park Coalition. He was a member of the state legislature for 5 years. He served on the committee addressing homeless services and homeless needs. He said that we allocated this year as taxpayers $300 million. And if you included all the philanthropic donations and philanthropic organizations, the total would be close to $500 million we are currently paying towards homeless services. And that's an enormous amount of money, because if you take the 6,500 people who are homeless in the state of Utah right now, and you just simply divide that by $500 million, the amount is $65,000 per person. Now, if you just wrote a check to every single homeless person for $65,000, do you think they could figure out how to get off the streets? I kind of think so. I kind of think that would be a better solution. But what you have instead is you have all of these state agencies and homeless service agencies, and they all have their own little silos, right? And they all get funding, they all have administrators, they all have programs, but they aren't really talking to each other. They're not really working together. So, for example, the biggest state agency that handles homeless services is DWS, Department of Workforce Services. They give out vouchers, they give out food stamps, they handle trying to give homeless just direct money to get them off the streets. And then you have Shelter the Homeless, you have the Road Home, which handles all the properties all over Utah, which is designed to get people off the streets. That's another huge amount of money. And then you have the organizations such as Volunteers of America, which is running a few of the shelters. And then you got the Department of Health and Human Services. And the Department of Health is what's cleaning up all these homeless camps. And that's got to be millions and millions of dollars for all these front-end loaders to come and bulldoze the homeless people out. And it's just so much money going toward essentially failed systems. I mean, I won't say that the permanent supportive housing is a failed system. That's keeping a lot of these people that would otherwise be homeless in housing. I think that's great. But the problem is the price tag. I want to show you the Magnolia project. This is what the city is basically celebrating as a success. The Magnolia apartment was a 65-unit apartment building built just for permanent supportive housing. It's a beautiful facility. It's kind of near Gormandy's Bakery downtown. Public-private partnership. Cowboy Partners did it with homeless housing credits, which is complicated. I'm not going to get into that right now. But they got money from Goldman Sachs, Zions Bank. But it was this was $16 million at a cost of $265,000 per unit. And I'm just like, these places have quartz countertops, they have balconies right in the heart of downtown in a really nice neighborhood. And I'm like, $265,000 per unit to get chronically homeless people into temporary housing till they can become independent is the goal here. But I think that what this is actually doing is creating a very skewed incentive system to keep people on the streets so that they can one day hope they get into permanent supportive housing like the Magnolia. I just don't understand how that can be a tenable model, because imagine you're working at Walmart and you hate your job, you want to get out of it, and you see your friend Joe, who was chronically homeless, get into this Magnolia and only have to pay, $200 a month in rent and only have to work like 5 hours a week. Wouldn't you rather do what Joe's doing than be working your job at Walmart, 50 hours a week to get terrible housing that you got to pay for? I just think the incentive structure of this system is skewed. People who need to get off the street, everyone I've talked to on the streets, all they really want is a tent. They want a tent where their stuff can stay safe. They want security, and they want a place with shade. And so I'm wondering, and if you're watching, please chime in and let me know what you think about this idea. There's a company out there called Boxable. It's a new company that is making prefabricated housing. And if you're joining us on YouTube, you can see what this looks like. These are folded up houses, and they can be folded and unfolded, and they're about 350 square feet, and they're $50,000 a piece. Compare that to the $265,000 price tag of the Magnolia. Why don't we take the field that I showed, I'll show it again, that's about 40 acres, and fill that field up full of boxable housing units. Now, I know you'd have to go in and you'd have to lay down concrete pads, and you'd have to provide water and electricity. But you could put 2 homeless people in each of these units. You'd have this 40 acres just sitting here. And then say a developer or the city wants to develop this land, you can fold up these boxable houses and go move them someplace else. I just want to know, why isn't this a better idea than what the mayor's doing, what the city is doing with all these partners? I just think this is an amazing company. These are incredibly well insulated. They're incredibly efficient. They don't use very much heating in the winter or cooling in the summer because they're really, really well insulated. And $50,000 each, and you can do 2 stories with these things, and they even include a kitchen. They wouldn't all have to include kitchens, I don't think, but look at these. It's like a beautiful design, and it's like, for the cost of one single Magnolia unit, you could get 4 or 5 of these boxable units, these casitas. So that's my proposal. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not a homeless or housing expert, but I just want to know, why not? If this field is empty, it's close to all the services in downtown, it's not being used. Obviously, it's not the most desirable because it's so close to the train tracks and the freeway, and you'd have to create the infrastructure for the heating and cooling. But why not? This would be far cheaper than $500 million that we're spending per year annually. And you could get people off the streets, and you could even have them start paying rent. And part of the camp could just be tents. And my idea is too, why not let people like Stacy Johnson be the HOA director and have a board of HOA people who are living in the camp decide if perhaps people need to be taken out of the camp who aren't following the rules, who aren't doing their job. I just think there's got to be a better solution than what we're doing now. I think if there is enough support for actually our coverage of this issue and continuing our deep dive into homelessness and housing, I strongly believe we can solve this. And I think it's like this: if we had 6,500 refugees show up in Utah, we would at least set up a FEMA camp and put up temporary tents in the city so these people could have shelters. But we're not willing to do this for 6,500 United States citizens who are homeless and who are instead wreaking havoc on Metro downtown Salt Lake City because they got to sleep on the streets. I don't get it. Why don't we set up, at least tents for these people? And so I actually called the mayor's office and I asked that very question. Why aren't you supporting some kind of housing tent city, at least, so these people aren't camping in Main Street? And so I interviewed a guy named Andrew Johnson. I'm going to play some of that interview with you, and hopefully you're going to be able to hear this. If you can't hear it, I'm going to just say what he has to say. But let me play this for you.
People getting the housing or their options more quickly. So when we talked to the state about it, as a city, we don't really have the resources to say we're going to pay for the whole thing and find a provider. So those are 2 of the major barriers.
Okay, let me pause it there. So what he said is, as we've looked into doing a homeless camp, but as a city, we don't have a resource provider or necessarily the land or the money to run such a camp. And so that's why Mendenhall wasn't considering this
That's
idea.
what we run into locally in talking through this about where do you find it, because generally they're moving them every 6 months or sometimes a year, depending on where you're at, and then who does it, who pays for it. And so the state will sort of look at their budgets and say, well, we haven't even budgeted enough for the winter overflow, let alone year round. So there's a dilemma there at multiple levels about pulling it off. But yeah, we had multiple discussions about that as sort of interim options, anything we can do to figure out some other alternative.
So and Mr. Johnson and Mayor Mendenhall's office realizes there's a major problem. They realize that something has to be done, but they're saying there's not enough money. That we need to find a resource organization who could run this camp. We need professional security. We need a lot of money. And the state, he said he talked to the state about it. They're not willing to put forth the money. And I just kind of think they are overestimating the amount of money, and they overcomplicate the whole thing. I mean, I've talked to these homeless people about these resource centers. They don't like these centers. Everybody I've talked to, because there's too much security. There's too much overburdensome regulation in entering these. They want to put everybody in a database. They have cameras everywhere. Everybody in the homeless community I've talked to about these resource centers says they feel like a prisoner when they go to these places. I think they need a chain link fence. They need some security for sure. They need rules, but they could assign each senior level homeless person a role in the camp. As Stacy Johnson was pointing out, they could have a job that they're supposed to do. They could have rules, and the homeless people, especially those who aren't mentally ill or addicted to drugs, could help enforce those rules. I don't think they need a whole bunch of cops all the time. I think they need sanitation, and they could have different levels of dwelling units available depending on how much people would be able or willing to pay in rent. And I think that part is critical. Like, if you can go to a job and work for, say, just 10 hours a week, maybe instead of living in a tent on a concrete pad, you can upgrade to one of these boxable units for $300 or $400 a month in rent. Or if you can go to a full-time job, maybe you can go to a boxable unit and not have to have a roommate. I think the strata of the incentive of working, the social strata clearly showing the incentive of working, should be on display. It shouldn't be the more chronically homeless you appear to be, the better housing you get. No, it should be the more you're able and willing to work and defeat your addiction, defeat your mental illness, the better situation you can live in, like it is in real society. And so that's kind of what I've gathered from my 8 months of covering this. I think that the mayor's office is overcomplicating, and the state is overcomplicating how a homeless camp could be run effectively. That Fort Pioneer, I went there 3 times. They had sanitation in place. They had a dumpster. They had buy-in from the homeless community. People had jobs there, both at the camp, and people had jobs where they would go to work every day. About 50 people, as Stacy Johnson said, could still go to work with that camp in place. I mean, that's a whole lot better than people camping on the streets and defecating in front of local businesses, ruining corners of downtown on Main Street. Of course, nobody would want to start a business now where Sam Weller Bookstore used to be. So I want to check out some of these comments that we've gotten. It's cool to see we've gotten some good comments on our Instagram feed. So we have a comment from Barbar Disco. Andrew's full of it. He used to be one of the better ones, and now he's caught up in the politics, security, abuse, overcrowding, no ability to take all of your belongings in. I've heard that too, that there's a lot of abuse going on at the homeless resource centers. Stacy Johnson said that her face was bitten up by a a woman who was really severely mentally disturbed when she tried to stay at a homeless resource center. I found that to be absolutely the case. The Gerald E. King Homeless Resource Center, outside of that place, there were severely mentally ill ladies there. It was very, very sad when I went to visit it. And so, yeah, I just think we've got to come up with better ideas. And I'll continue to talk. Andrew Johnson, he actually said he would come on the program at the end of my interview. Be awesome if he would come on. It'd be really great if Mayor Mendenhall came on. Next week, we're talking to Eric Peterson of Utah Investigative Journalism Project about very, very likely about a lot of people getting kicked out of their housing by landlords, rent prices going up. He's been studying that issue through his organization. And we're also having on the program a really awesome guest, Dave Boucher of the Other Side Academy. He runs the Other Side Academy. That is one of the most interesting, awesome programs I've ever seen. They'll take any convicted felon, any sort of person who's homeless, addicted, whatever, doesn't matter what problem you have. If you commit to their program, which is 18 months, and you work for them with their moving company, they will put you up in an apartment. They'll feed you every day. They'll pay you. And it's been an amazing success because it's actually run by the people who went through the program. So instead of a layer of bureaucracy, which is very political and who gets appointed to those positions, it's everybody is running that organization based on being successful in the program. So he's going to come on the program next week. Really excited about our guest next week, but please chime in. I'd love to hear from more of you. Thank you so much, Barbara Disco. Yeah, I agree. You don't beat addiction and mental illness. You learn better ways to live with it. I absolutely agree with that. You can't, you as I've learned from people who I have in my family who have mental illness, you learn to live with it and you learn to cope with it. And I think that if the incentives are out there to help you, find your best place in society and find the best kind of work that's good for you, I think that is actually work can be highly, highly beneficial for people who are suffering from mental illness. And so with that, thank you so much for watching. You can watch this episode in its entirety on YouTube. We'll post it at utahstories.com. We're going to have an article with this story, with this podcast tomorrow. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.